Donald Trump firing the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the nonpartisan organization which publishes job data, economics data. They've been doing this for well over 100 years, and he fired her because he felt their numbers were wrong. What numbers are we talking about specifically? Well, for July, there were only 73,000 jobs added to the United States economy, which was greatly below expectations. May and June saw the numbers be revised by a combined 250,000. Donald Trump did not like these numbers because he's a thin skinned baby whose ego is popped more easily than a bubble. He wants all news to be positive, regardless of how accurate or not it is. In September, when the August jobs report comes out, they're going to say that Donald Trump added 3.75 million jobs. I'm predicting it. It's going to be an absurdly high number that nobody outside of the MAGA base is going to believe. This is courtesy of PBS. This is Donald Trump saying, I think the numbers were wrong. I individually counted every job added over the month of July, and I counted 967,327 jobs. I don't know if you know this, but that is the highest that anybody has ever counted in the history of ever. And it just so happened to be with our tremendous job report.
How are you? Yeah, the jobs report today were rigged. Oh yeah, I think so. And if you look at before the election, the same kind of thing happened. And I think you'll see some very interesting information come out. But we got ready. You have to have honest reports. And when you look at those numbers, or when you look at just before the election, and then after the election, they corrected it by 800,000 or 900,000 jobs. Yeah, I would say so.
What was news to me was the revisionism that goes on. I didn't realize, maybe because I'm stupid, I didn't realize that the jobs report numbers were revised literally all the time. This data is collected by way of surveying private companies. And the BLS does not always have the appropriate data at the time that the reports are published. So it's not uncommon for these numbers to be revised. I would say, however, it is probably largely uncommon for them to be revised by 250,000. But the idea that the head of the BLS is biased towards Joe Biden because she was appointed by Joe Biden and confirmed with bipartisan Senate support, mind you, is just silly. Say what you will about Joe Biden. I have said a lot about him over his tenure as presidency. The reason why his jobs report numbers were more flattering was because he actually had a domestic policy agenda that stimulated job creation. Donald Trump currently does not have that. These tariffs, there have been mass layoffs ever since his term started. Microsoft laid off 9,000 people in June or July. There have been more layoffs this year than any year since 2020, which remember was the COVID year. The article reads, President Donald Trump says he, quote, did the right thing by having his team remove the head of the agency that produces the monthly jobs figures after a weak report showed hiring slowed and was much weaker in April and May than previously reported. I apologize. I said May and June originally. Quote, I had issues with the numbers for a long time, but today we are doing so well. I believe the numbers were phony. So you know what I did? I fired her. And you know what? I did the right thing. We are so fucked, guys. I don't know if you recognize this. This is North Korea, Kim Jong-un levels of propaganda. We literally have our own version of the North Korean newscaster, of the female North Korean newscaster. That is going to be Caroline Leavitt come Thanksgiving. There is no war in Ba Sing Se type shit. Once you abolish all objectivity from any situation, it's fucked. There's no other way for me to describe it. This is Banana Republic type shit. This is dictator type shit. Even if I were the president and there were numbers that came out that I didn't like, I would own up to it because I'm the fucking president of the United States. If there is slow job creation, it falls on the president and on the lawmakers to find a way to stimulate that. But of course, Donald Trump does not have any interest in doing that. His only interest at this point is keeping himself out of prison, keeping himself out of the Epstein files, and lining the pockets of him and his donor buddies. Trump alleged that the figures were manipulated for political reasons, said that Erica Mc, McIntarfer, holy shit, the director of the Bureau of Labor Statistics who was appointed by President Joe Biden, should be fired. He provided no evidence for the charge. Quote, I have directed my team to fire this Biden political appointee immediately. She will be replaced with someone much more competent and qualified. Trump later posted, in my opinion, today's jobs numbers were rigged in order to make the Republicans and me look bad. They're so, dude, I literally cannot stress to you. This is the dumbest man that has ever held the presidency. He has no idea. He has no ability to look like, even forget 2 steps ahead, like 1 foot in front of the other. If you're saying now that the jobs were rigged, the average person with a normally functioning brain is going to say, well, did they boost the numbers for Trump originally to make it look better? That's the only logical thought that one could have. And then again, going forward, everyone is going to be skeptical of these jobs numbers. Once you destroy any impartiality, it is tremendously difficult to gain it back. You have effectively lost trust of the general public. And once you lose trust of the general public, it is exceedingly difficult to rebuild that trust. The charge that the data was faked is an explosive one that threatens to undercut the political legitimacy of the U.S. government's economic data, which has long been seen as the gold standard of economic measurement globally. Economists and Wall Street investors have long accepted the data as free from political bias. So many of these government agencies that Donald Trump doesn't like are well respected because of their unbiased nature. Data does not lean left or right. Data exists. Data is merely there for interpretive purposes. If you perceive data as left wing, it is your biases that lead you to that conclusion. They're just numbers. And again, these are numbers collected from these private companies. Trump's move to fire McIntarfer represented another extraordinary assertion of presidential power. He has wielded the authority of the White House to try to control the world's international trade system and media companies, America's top universities, and Congress's congressional power of the purse, among other institutions. Naturally, conservatives see this, and they are dick riding hard, bro. They are clapping on it. This video that we're going to watch is from a weekend Fox News show, which means C-level talent at best. And their commentary is reflective of that. These 3 goobers don't have any idea how to justify this, but they're just going to say, you know what, Trump is right, and I have faith in him.
But it is Saturday, and we have news. President Trump now moving to fire the labor stats chief following a much weaker than expected July jobs report and revised numbers from previous months.
Madeline Rivera is live in Washington with the details. Madeline.
Hi, good morning. The president railed against the former commissioner of labor statistics, Erica McIntarfer, after seeing these numbers. The BLS reported the U.S. only added 73,000 jobs in July, and it sharply revised its figures for the preceding month, saying only 14,000 jobs were created in June and 19,000 in May. That's more than 250,000 lower than what the agency had originally estimated. The unemployment rate also ticked up from 4.1% in June to 4.2% last month. The president saying on Truth Social, McIntarfer will be replaced with someone much more competent and qualified. Important numbers like this must be fair and accurate. McIntarfer was nominated by...
These numbers must be fair and accurate to me, to nobody else. If I don't like the numbers, I will fire you because I am a baby. Please, Stephen Miller, come and change my diaper.
Former President Biden in July 2023. She was confirmed by the Senate 88-8. Vice President J.D. Vance voted for her. The job survey is based on information from thousands of employers nationwide. The agency asks them things like how many workers are on their payrolls and how many hours they worked. They revise the numbers after evaluating information that may not have been available to them at the time. Still, National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett is doubling down.
You could look at the numbers and see what's been happening. And basically, the BLS has been revising numbers all over the place in a way that makes it so that I don't think anybody really can trust that the numbers are right whichever way they're going. And so I think it is a good time for a fresh set of eyes to look at what the heck is going on, because the labor numbers are so important.
The chief of BLS doesn't see these numbers until shortly before they're published. The data is collected by hundreds, potentially even thousands of people across the agency. There isn't some grand conspiracy that all of these people hate President Trump. In fact, people get jobs at agencies like the BLS because they're able to operate free of political boundaries. That is the allure of taking a government job. You were free to do your job, to collect and publish this data, and then the administration does whatever the fuck they want with it. But now we're at a point where you have to be a Trump dick rider to even have a job in the federal government. And then this idiot is, he can't comprehend the fact that people are still going to maintain that skepticism going forward, all because you fired this woman because of one shitty jobs report, which is entirely the fault of the administration.
Deputy Commissioner William Ostrowski is now serving as the acting BLS commissioner. Charlie, Katie, and Greg.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Maddie.
Thanks, Maddie.
You know, it is interesting, and I'm sure that Kevin Hassett is correct that these the numbers that the BLS provides are very important. I do feel like you know, the private sector does a good job of providing very, very good information. The one area where fake news is not accepted is among investors on Wall Street. And so I've always sort of wondered about this. And, you know, the idea that we all saw it over the past several years. Every time you would have important numbers come out, we would later find out that the BLS had put out phony numbers and that they always had to be revised. And every time, kind of like a lot of things in politics, they always had to be revised in the same direction.
Oh, weird.
It's so strange.
These people are babies. They are infants. They are 4 years old. This level of this commentary is elementary. The idea that you are not privy to additional information is juvenile. The whole point of science, of data collection, is that it's constantly evolving. There is a constant influx of numbers that affect the outcome. Like, things don't just happen in a vacuum. You're like 50 years old. How are you incapable of understanding this? Like, do you think your audience is that fucking stupid? I mean, I'm sure there's definitely some dumb motherfuckers watching that who think that, like, the numbers just appear and then they're gone.
How that works.
Interesting.
It's such a great point, Charlie. So in August of 2024, this same BLS chief, McIntarfer, revised the jobs numbers by 818,000. 800,000. And you're right, it comes from the survey. And look, the markets took notice of the lackluster job report, and the president did, obviously, by reacting to this chief. But let's look at Trumponomics.
The market fucking tanked in the aftermath of this, by the way. It's not that they took notice. It's that everything went red. It's even stranger for them to be skeptical of this when even Wall Street, all throughout the beginning, all throughout the start of this Trump term, they're like, yo, you're fucking up everything. Jamie Dimon is telling Donald Trump, dude, you're fucking up the bag. The stock market has had numerous 1,000-point drops. The idea that Trump is fucking up the economy is not far-fetched, and the numbers are merely reflective of his poor economic policy.
Economy, you can see, if you go by the numbers, inflation 2.7%, wages up 3.9%, the U.S. economy growing 3% in quarter two, unemployment rate ticked up 0.1%, manufacturing output up nearly 2%, and that tariff revenue $150 billion.
All right, we're going to break this down one by one because these don't fucking mean anything. All right. Inflation has been hovering around 2.5% to 3% for the last couple of months. Inflation is not the issue anymore. The issue is the cost of goods still being ridiculously fucking high. Inflation is relative. I'm not saying that this is a bad inflation rate. No, this is a normal inflation rate. What is abnormal are the prices of groceries. What's abnormal is that the expected price increase in eggs is going to be 25% this year. That's abnormal. Abnormal. Wages up 4%. That's fucking terrific, I guess. But overall, being a wage laborer in the United States fucking sucks. The federal minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. 60 to 70% of people still live paycheck to paycheck. More than 50% of Americans don't have more than $600 in an emergency fund. This is not indicative of anything. This is just a fucking number. The 3% GDP growth in quarter 2 is average. Over the last 12 quarters, the GDP has increased, or the GDP increases has been anywhere from 2 to 4%. There have been 2 quarters where it's been less than 1%. One of them was under Biden, one of them was under Trump. 3% is normal. Unemployment, 4.2%, is actually up from 4.1%, as the reporter mentioned at the beginning. Manufacturing output 1.8%. This fucking sucks. This is not a sizable increase. Why are you noting this? If it were 3%, if it were 5%, that would be better. Wonderful. But there have been 26,000 manufacturing jobs lost in the last month. Tariff revenue, $150 billion. This averages out to $25 billion a month. This is bullshit. This is nothing. You cannot pay off the federal debt with this when you have a government whose monthly expenses are $500 billion fucking dollars. The Trump economy is it's only beneficial if you are in the top 1%.
I think what's interesting is, listen, the markets took notice, the White House took notice, and there is certainly tariff uncertainty. You can't blame CEOs for maybe sitting on the sidelines to see how it impacts them. But if you nerd out and go back to Wednesday, where I was at the White House and the GDP numbers came out, you see that while you had the quarter 2 go from 0.5% to 3% in private sector spending, right, you see that non-defense government spending went down -11. And that is a 100% reversal from the Biden years, which were driven by government spending. So the Trump economy...
Government spending had almost no impact on inflation under the Biden administration. It counted for a couple percentage points. That's it. Most of the inflation that occurred under Joe Biden was due to corporate price gouging. Why is this? Conservatives will point to the stimulus packages, which, by the way, Donald Trump included himself in one of them. They conveniently don't mention that. The reason why those stimuli were not inflationary was because they were given to working class people. It was distributed amongst people who needed to spend that money, whether it be on bills, whether it be on, whether it be them spending it in their local economy, stimulating business activity at a time of severe turmoil. That's why it was not inflationary. It is significantly more inflationary to do a Wall Street bailout than it is to give a middle class family $600.
Is reverse that and driven on private economic investment. And that's why there is so much of the world looking at the opportunity. I think this is a time to wait and watch what happens, right, because you're looking at, listen, you got the Canada and Mexico deals hanging out there. Those economies are ancillary to our economy, but yet they depend heavily on us. That's likely going to go in our direction.
Bro, that's false. That's not true. That's fake news. The idea that Mexico and Canada are entirely reliant on the United States is just propaganda. The United States is an import-based economy. We don't manufacture anything. That is why these tariff deals are so fucking stupid. Donald Trump has no leverage in any of these situations.
EU deal is a huge incentive for European countries to build and manufacture things where? In the U.S. Who are they going to hire? American workers. So I think the naysayers, even the Wall Street Journal had a piece out today saying the Trump economy stumbles. I think that story hasn't yet been written because the economy as a whole, it's like missing the forest for the trees.
Yeah, well, that's the key thing is
When I do economic discussions, when I have economic commentary, I'm fundamentally analyzing the situation differently than all of these people on corporate media because they look at GDP, they look at fucking inflation, they look at all this nerd shit and assess whether or not the economy is good. Is that part of the conversation? Certainly. But when you're struggling to pay rent, when you're struggling to buy groceries, when you're struggling to get your kids school supplies, because school is right around the corner for a lot of you motherfuckers, including in New York State, it's a month away. If you're struggling to do all of that, why are you going to think that the economy is good? Why do you give a shit about the GDP numbers when every time you go to the grocery store to feed your family of four, it's $200? Why are you going to give a fuck about manufacturing output when you don't know if you're going to be able to afford your next oil delivery? Because it's $3.60 a gallon, and that's a $600 purchase that you may or may not be able to make. That is not indicative of a thriving economy. When your consumer base, when the 99% is struggling, your economy is not good. I don't give a shit what the GDP numbers are. The GDP could be $100 trillion. The United States could have a larger GDP than every other fucking country on the planet combined. But if all of those things that I previously mentioned remain the same, the economy is not thriving. It is only thriving if you are the rich asshole that controls all of those, that controls that business. It's only thriving if you're that billionaire asshole who is heavily invested in Wall Street. This commentary is not reflective of the lived experiences of average Americans.
we're losing government jobs, and government jobs take from the economy. They don't drive growth. The only part of the economy that drives growth are private sector jobs, and onshoring and redoing global trade. Obviously,
This is just like stupid. Government jobs don't stimulate the economy, even though someone cannot set up a business without actively involving themselves in government. Whether that be budgets, permits, whether that be, oh, I don't know, building your business on the fucking road that the government paved. This is baby brain shit, dude. The idea that the government does not contribute to economic growth is just a fucking lie. There are actually studies that highlighted this when it comes to infrastructure spending. For example, spending money on infrastructure will, at the worst, contribute 0.0% to the GDP. At the most, I forget what the exact number is. But again, at the worst, it's quote unquote not contributing to the economy. But it allows those businesses to participate in the economy.
take some time and some changes in the economy to make that happen.
I'm Steve Ducey. I'm Brian.
Like, we're already, like, the propaganda, dude, it's like, it's so weak. It's so weak. That's, like, the one thing that I didn't expect from the Trump dictatorship was that everyone would just be a fucking loser. Hollywood and just media in general has always portrayed these fascist leaders as the most brilliant people ever to have existed, and I just can't see that. I'm not so sure that the evil genius archetype exists. I'm watching it play out in real time, and I'm like, these people are like, they're working with half of their brain.